Today on the Cool Stuff Guys Like channel, I'm going to talk about this Cub Cadet in front of me and why I think it is the most over-engineered or over-designed garden tractor ever made. This is a Cub Cadet 72. It's a 1968 model. It's the last of the round fender Cub Cadets. So you see these really beautiful round fenders. After this model, and even some of the bigger tractors in this model line, you'll see will have kind of the squared off rectangular fenders. They're a little bit, I think, less collectible when you get into that square fender style. This is also the narrow frame, they call it, Cub Cadets. So if you look at a newer, 1970s into 1980s Cub Cadets, what you'll see down here is the frame will kind of flare out. And they did that to start to fit those twin cylinder engines and bigger engines. Again, it becomes maybe a little bit less classic looking as you get into those wide frame Cub Cadets versus these narrow frames, but it is a lot easier to work on. The wide frames are going to have a removable tunnel cover, so you can access things without having to remove the whole rear end of the tractor. The reason, or some of the reasons, I would call this, specifically the Cub Cadet 70, 71, 72, and 73, the most over-engineered Cub Cadets ever made is, so just like any other Cub Cadet of the era, they have the Farmall Cub rear end. And this is, I think, really just the engineers for International. These are all made by International Harvester. So those engineers at the time said, how can we make a small tractor without having to retool all this stuff? What do we have laying around that we can make work to make a small tractor, just to save a little bit on those R&D costs? Well, they used the Farmall Cub rear end. The Farmall Cub, it's a small tractor, but it's also a real tractor. It's a 4-cylinder. It had up to 18 horsepower. So it's cast iron, and it's built pretty much to be indestructible, even at those Farmall Cub up to 18 horsepower levels. Well, this Cub Cadet has 7 horsepower. This is a Kohler K161, 7 horsepower, 1-cylinder, cast iron, flathead engine. It is completely indestructible. It actually has plenty of power for this gear-driven tractor. The gear drive just doesn't suck a lot of horsepower, but it's, for this drivetrain, it's really not a lot of horsepower. So when you buy these, particularly the 70 to 73 model numbers, the rear ends are going to be in like perfect shape because they're just not getting really abused. It's really, really underpowered for the drivetrain. So then you would say, why don't I think the Cub Cadet original, so that would be the original Cub Cadet made from like 1960 to 1963, why is that not the most over-engineered tractor? And the reason I would say that is it is not a true shaft drive. So when you get to the model 70, they've actually figured out a way to make it a true shaft drive without a belt in there. People don't really think of a belt drive tractor as a true, real deal tractor. So this has a little 7 horsepower engine, basically the same engine that's in the Cub Cadet original. Beefy, crazy strong, heavy gauge steel, cast iron front axle, and it's got a shaft that couples the engine to the transmission. And what's even cooler about it, and this is pretty uncommon, is they were able to mount the engine low enough in the frame that there's no universal joints or rag joints in that drive shaft. It's just completely straight line, output of engine to input of transmission. So nothing to fail, like essentially indestructible, especially at 7 horsepower, let's put it that way. I can talk about some cool features that this tractor has that were factory options, some of which probably were originally on it, some of them were added over the years. Believe it or not, The dualies were a factory option. You could buy these with dual rear wheels. They probably weren't going to have ag tires like this. They were going to have more of like a old like Jeep, Willys Jeep style tread, but super cool. You could buy these with the dualies. The rear wheel weights, again, that's going to be a factory option. Headlights and tail light. This one has a rear work light. Normally what you'd have is a red tail light on this if it had the lighting package. I think the rear work light's probably a little bit more useful, but you know, it's not a factory original. It's probably period correct. The sleeve hitch, this is called a Brindley sleeve hitch. These were made by a company called Brindley. Cub Cadet called it the 3-point hitch. It's obviously not a 3-point hitch though, like you would imagine on a bigger tractor. So this would allow you to lift and lower rear implements. Like this one has a single bottom moldboard plow on it. This plow is a couple years newer than the tractor, I think in 1971, but it's the same. It's like what should be on this tractor. This one has a spring assist. So to help assist in lifting and lowering this this sleeve hitch, you know, this is pretty heavy. Putting this plow on here, it has a big tension spring to help lift and lower that. You could actually get these with a cigarette lighter, so that would probably go right here. This has a push button start, which is not original, but it's what came on it when I got it. But normally right around here you would have a cigarette lighter. Now this is the big dollar, one of the few big dollar add-ons, and that is a creeper. So this is a 4-to-1 reduction unit. So you get massive torque output at the rear end at the expense of speed. So in first gear with the creeper on, this will only go 0.6 miles per hour top speed at 3,600 RPMs. So if you're like idling around, you're going like 0.1 miles per hour, but with massive torque, because you're just getting all that torque multiplication from that planetary gear reduction. This is the original style seat that would be on this tractor. This is the proper seat for the tractor, but I had to restore it. Any of these seats you're gonna find are gonna be usually rusted. There's gonna be a big rust hole in the middle. So I had to do a lot of welding and grinding to try to get this seat into the condition that I would like it to be. If you find one of these tractors with the fenders, that's gonna be something you want. The fenders were not standard from the factory. They were a factory option, and a lot of people aren't gonna pay extra money to have fenders. So probably maybe 1 in 3 of these ever sold had fenders, and they only really ever sold, I think, about 9,000 of these tractors. So I would say it's not incredibly rare, but it's also not incredibly common. Something you'll find on all these old Cub Cadets is the starter is also a generator. So it's a starter generator. So you apply power to it, it spins, it starts the engine, and once the engine's running, it's using those copper windings and magnets to generate power, which is then recharging the battery, running the headlights, tail lights, and all that stuff. That's not necessarily uncommon for the era, but you would never see something like that on like a modern vehicle. These old narrow frame Cub Cadets have narrower front rims. So I generally like that look. This one has the 3-rib ag tires on it. Something I did here that is not original. So most of this is done to be, you know, as original as possible. Even from the factory, you'll see that these coils are usually painted right from the factory. A lot of people give me crap for that, but that does seem to be the way they came from the factory. But I put this, normally you just have a exhaust, a little spark arrestor can here. This is a stainless steel grab handle from like a shower that I had a friend of mine TIG weld, and slotted it, clamped it onto the original output there. Exhaust output. This glass sediment bowl, again, that's going to be what you'd have from the factory. This isn't the original one. You're going to have a metal fuel line, not copper, but copper's so easy to work with and it looks kind of cool. So, you know, what I did was a copper fuel line. Here you have your voltage regulator that is kind of mechanical. It uses points and little contacts to regulate the voltage. I do have a 38-inch mower deck for this, which I haven't yet fully restored. I've got it sanded down and ready to finish, but as you guys well know, this stuff can take a long time. These are all reproduction stickers, but really, really close to what is I could not tell any difference between these stickers and what would have come on it originally. On the front of this tractor, you have the Cub Cadet kind of quick release. So you could mount a snow plow to the front, a snow blower to the front, the mule drive for the deck. It all just kind of clips on and clips off with this quick release. That's a really kind of a novel, I would say, super easy to use thing that I really think these International Harvester engineers thought this out, you know, really, really well. And I think since this 70 through 73 model series was kind of the replacement for the Cub Cadet original, it's kind of like they were able to implement all the things they would have really have wanted to implement in the Cub Cadet original, but they just didn't have time to get out. If you know any cool facts about these old tractors, I would love to hear them in the comments. And if you think that I'm wrong about this being the most over-engineered tractor, garden tractor of all time, tell me what you think is the most over-engineered garden tractor of all time. Hope this project was kind of interesting to you, and thanks for watching.